China, America, Taiwan. In all one world, there is no crisis zone, no flashpoint, and no geopolitical hot zone where the potential for global cataclysm runs quite so high. Mainland China lays claim to the Republic of China's territory on Taiwan and has made clear its desire to bring Taiwan back by force. Taiwan, sitting out on an island and armed to the teeth, has made it clear it would resist. And as soon as hostilities begin, the United States will be right there to take part. If any such war broke out, it would immediately place two militarily powerful nations with immense nuclear stockpiles directly at odds, threatening the sort of escalation that could end life as we know it. But China has an Achilles heel, a sort of critical vulnerability that, if it could credibly be threatened, might be enough to put China's Taiwan aspirations to bed. It's known as the Three Gorges Dam, an exceptionally powerful hydroelectric gravity dam that has spent nearly a decade as the most electrically productive power station in the world. But it's not just a dam. It's also a time bomb, with over 39 cubic kilometers of water held back behind it and hundreds of millions of people living downstream. Destroy it, and China will experience a wartime disaster that would make the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki look like hours away. So in this special episode of War Graphics, we're going to be exploring the nature of the Three Gorges Dam, what it is, how it's defended, what could happen if it was destroyed, and what, if anything, China could do to protect it. Situated deep in the Chinese heartland, the Three Gorges Dam is one of the most impressive engineering feats of China's entire history, right alongside the Great Wall or the modern Tiangong space station. Constructed in several phases over the course of decades, the dam has been complete since 2006 and has been producing electricity at peak capacity since 2012. It sits alongside the Yangtze River, the longest river in China and the third longest in the world, behind only the Nile and the Amazon. It is instrumental in preventing floods downriver during the rainy months of the year. It's built to allow ocean-going freighters to pass through a series of locks to continue inland, and it powers millions upon millions of homes and businesses all across China. In order to understand just how strategically significant the Three Gorges Dam really is, we first got to understand its absolutely mind-numbing size. It's over 2,335 metres long, or well over a mile at 7,660 feet. Its maximum height is 185 metres, 607 feet, and its total volume includes 28 million cubic metres of concrete alongside 463,000 metric tons of steel. Its deep-water reservoir stretches far back upriver, including in the Three Gorges, a series of gorges along the river for which the dam got its name. Its spillway has the ability to handle up to 116,000 cubic metres of water per second, and its total catchment area spans 1 million square kilometres across China. This thing is not just big, it is big beyond comprehension, and it's got major real and symbolic value to the Chinese government. Just before we continue with today's video, I do want to talk about something a bit personal, and that is hair loss. Now, as you can see, to embrace the fact that Keats can't save my level of hair loss. It was too late. Keats was around 10 years earlier than it was. I'd have been on it. But look, if you've still got hair and you're beginning to lose it, Keats can help you out. They're an online subscription service that is changing the game for men dealing with male pattern problems. Keats is super convenient, no more awkward trips to the doctor's office or the pharmacy. Just get expert care from the comfort of your own home. And the best part, it comes in discreet packaging. No one needs to know about your path to luscious locks. So, what's new is that Keats tailors the treatment plan just for you. It's like having your own hair guardian angel, and guess what? It's not going to break the bank. Keats treatments are typically half the cost of traditional pharmacy prices. Affordable and effective, it's a great combo. Keats offers clinically proven treatments. According to studies, these treatments are 90% effective at treating hair loss and can increase hair growth by up to 35%. Plus, they have a fantastic 2-in-1 gel. And for those of you wondering, Keats is trusted by almost 1 million men. That's a lot of satisfied customers with over 4,500 5-star reviews. So here's the deal. Hair loss stops with Keats, and I've got a special offer. Just go to keats.com/Simon or click the link in the description below. That's keats.com/Simon. Your journey to great hair starts there. Below. Thanks to Keats for sponsoring. But as much as those facts and figures are genuinely very impressive, and if you'd like to learn more, you can check out our video on the Three Gorges Dam, our sister channel mega projects. All those cool trivia items do double duty as a major national security concern. The logic here is not very hard to follow, but we'll spell it out anyway. The Three Gorges Dam holds back an unbelievable amount of water, which otherwise would be travelling down the rest of the Yangtze River. If that dam were to suddenly stop being a dam, either due to an attack or another catastrophe, then the dozens of cubic kilometres of water in the dam's reservoir will rush downstream in a high enough volume that anything and anyone in their immediate path is just going to be totally wiped out. To get an idea for just how catastrophic the destruction of the Three Gorges Dam would be, we'll start by asking a simple question. Who lives downstream of the Three Gorges Dam on the Yangtze River? That would include cities like Yichang, urban population of 1.6 million, Jingzhou, urban population 1 million, Wuhan, 12.3 million, Huangshi, 700,000, and a whole lot more. And that's just in the province where the Three Gorges Dam is located. Further downriver, you'll find major cities like Nanjing, urban population 1.3 million, Zhujiang, urban population 2.8, or Changzhou, urban population 3.6. All in all, up to 400 million people live downstream of the dam, meaning that if the dam were to break, a group of people larger than all but 2 global nations would be at imminent risk of death. These risks aren't a new revelation to the people downstream either. Take, for example, the extreme flooding in the upper Yangtze that happened in the year 2020. In that crisis, heavy rainfall upstream caused a peak inflow of up to 75 million litres of water per second into the Three Gorges Reservoir. That crisis prompted officials in China's Sichuan province to evacuate over 250,000 people, while the dam itself was made to discharge 49.2 million litres of water every second. An unbelievable rate of outflow that eclipsed anything else the dam had been expected to handle in the years that it opened. During the crisis, the Chinese government projected calm around the situation, emphasising that reservoirs upstream would help the dam resist the flood. But nonetheless, the peak water level at the Three Gorges came within 10 metres or less from cresting over the top. That's 20 metres past what's considered warning level. The 2020 flooding wasn't a one-off issue either. The Yangtze River basin was long known for apocalyptic levels of flooding prior to the dam being built, including a flood in 1931 that killed about 3.7 million people and displaced 40 million more. But all of this is just to give an idea of what natural catastrophes could do in the Yangtze River basin. Destruction on that scale, while it would certainly have the potential to be devastating, still can't remotely compare to what a complete release of the Three Gorges Reservoir would mean. A cubic kilometre of water is a quantity that we can't really do justice, other than suggesting that you picture the nearest major city and imagine a cube of water 1 kilometre wide, 1 kilometre long, and 1 kilometre cool, just sitting in the centre of it. What we can at least hope to convey is that this would be the sort of flood where nothing can even hope to stand in the way. Against that sort of force, entire neighbourhoods of high-rise buildings would be uprooted, bridges and dams downstream would be wiped away, and an unbelievable amount of debris would quickly saturate the rushing water, meaning that anybody else in its path isn't just dealing with a wall of water that's higher than the city's tallest tower. It's a wall of water filled with shrapnel the size of houses, plus a whole lot of toxic chemicals flowing at speeds of up to 100 kilometres an hour. In cities near the dam, there would likely be little chance of survival at all. In cities located further away, only the lucky would get out alive, as even with hours of time to try and escape, panic and even social breakdown could play a major role in preventing people from getting out of the water's path. Adding insult to injury, or really just adding more injury to an already incomprehensible level of injury, the dam sits on 2 major fault lines where it's believed to have caused thousands of small earthquakes. And if the reservoir's over 40 billion tons of water was suddenly drained from that area, major quakes could rip through the area as well. With such an unbelievable potential for destruction, it should be no surprise that the Three Gorges Dam should not just be a prime target, but the prime target for any country that expects it might find itself at war with China. At the top of the shortlist, of course, is Taiwan. But South Korea, Japan, the Philippines, Vietnam, India, and the United States all have their own tensions with China, and the popular sentiment in several of those countries is that they will, one day, end up at war with China as China's global ambitions continue to grow. Now, we'll get more into the specifics of just how an attack might work and how feasible it would be in just a moment. But before we do any of that, we've got to emphasise just how many nations have reason to draw up contingency plans for war with China. While those nations are not particularly inclined to talk about any plans to strike the Three Gorges Dam or their capability to do so, it's the sort of target that's just impossible to miss. And while you might be thinking to yourself, come on back, boy, everybody's got dams, it's not that simple. While yes, everybody does have dams, and while yes, dams have been major military targets in the past, as recently as June of 2023, when Ukraine's Kakhovka Dam was breached and the resulting flood killed at least several dozen people, well, China is a bit of a special circumstance. Take, for example, the Hoover Dam in the United States. It's over 700 feet tall, 1,200 feet long, and its reservoir, Lake Mead, has a total capacity nearly as big as the Three Gorges Reservoir at 35 cubic kilometers, although we should acknowledge that the water level at Lake Mead is nowhere near that high right now. But if the Hoover Dam were to be destroyed, there would be no Wuhan-sized city in the floodwaters path. Instead, the casualties would likely include places like Laughlin, Nevada, population 8,658, Needles, California, population 4,903, and Lake Havasu City, population 27,000. A catastrophic break of the Hoover Dam would sow devastation through those communities, but even without evacuations, the death toll would be a tiny fraction of what China would experience downstream from the Three Gorges. And not only that, but the US would have the benefit of evacuating those not particularly large townships with hours of advance warning. In China, millions of people who live near to the dam would likely only have minutes to escape the floodwaters. While we could certainly identify dams around the world where a collapse and a catastrophic flood would kill horrific numbers of people, the sheer scale of devastation that would occur after a Three Gorges collapse is a uniquely Chinese problem. So, with the strategic value and the devastating potential of the Three Gorges Dam now firmly established, we've got to move to a second question. Could a nation hostile to China actually destroy the dam if they wanted to? I'm going to break that answer down into three sections. The weapons other nations could use to destroy the dam, the passive factors that make it more or less likely that the dam will be destroyed, and the defense measures China has or might have in place to prevent such an attack from being successful. First, there's the offensive weaponry that the dam might eventually have to deal with, and to account for that, we're going to begin with Taiwan. Conventional missiles have long been an essential component of Taiwan's ability to deter China from attacking it using what's called a porcupine strategy of defense. Now, we've done a separate video on Taiwan's porcupine defense in the past, so check that out if you're interested. But basically, the theory goes that Taiwan would like to make itself as unpalatable for invasion as possible by ensuring that if China attacks Taiwan, China will have to deal with massive retaliation and massive casualties as punishment, even if Taiwan still loses in the end. In that strategic sense, the Three Gorges Dam is perhaps the best thing for Taiwan to attempt to target. In exchange for invading an island and conquering less than 24 million people, China gets to absorb incredible casualties at a number potentially greater than Taiwan's entire population. If Taiwan did want to launch that sort of attack, they'd have to do it with one of the missiles in their arsenal. While that arsenal may not entirely be a matter of public record, we do know that they've got some serious kit on hand, and specifically a land attack cruise missile that's currently in operation called the Yangfei. Although the size of Taiwan's total Yangfei arsenal is unknown, Taiwan is believed to have at least a few dozen of the missiles, if not more. They utilize ramjet engines, enabling travel at speeds of over a kilometer per second, and they can carry semi-armor-piercing explosive warheads. The standard range of the Yangfei missile is 1,200 kilometers. Almost exactly the distance from the Taiwanese capital of Taipei to the Three Gorges Dam, although there is an extended range version currently in development that's capable of traveling up to 2,000 kilometers. Taiwan also has well over 100 American-made F-16s and nearly 200 older model American F-5 and French Mirage 2000 jets, all of which could conceivably fill an attack role, and all of which could conceivably make it all the way to the Three Gorges Dam from Taiwan, even if they don't expect to make it home. Then there's China's other most likely adversary, the United States. Where land-attack missiles are concerned, the big one for China to worry about is the Tomahawk, which can be launched from ships, submarines, or land, travel a range of between 1,250 and 2,500 kilometers, and be launched in the dozens for even minor attacks, let alone over hundreds the US would likely be willing to expend in a major war. Just for perspective, the Army Jet-class destroyer can carry over 90 Tomahawk missiles on board. Also in the American arsenal are new hypersonic missiles like the long-range hypersonic weapon expected to already be in Army service and soon coming to the Navy, and other high-powered conventional weapons. Of course, there's also all the nuclear warheads the US could deploy against China, but for the purposes of averting a global nuclear holocaust, we're going to assume that today's hypotheticals won't involve the use of nuclear weapons. And then, of course, there's the United States Air Force. Strategic bombers like the B-2 Spirit, the B-1B Lancer, and the B-52 Stratofortress are each more than capable of performing overflights of the entire Chinese mainland, taking off from one US base and landing in another halfway around the world. While they fly over, they're capable of dropping not just nuclear warheads, but conventional weapons like the bunker-buster massive ordnance penetrator, or MOP, which is designed to be able to destroy WMDs buried underground in reinforced bunkers. They'd also be able to call upon the C-130 Hercules, a long-range strategic airlifter that could also perform overflights of the Chinese mainland, where dropping the so-called mother-of-all bombs, a nearly 10,000-kilogram bomb with a blast yield equivalent to 11 tons of TNT. Those American strategic bombers will be joined in a few years by the B-21 Raider, and will be protected by legions of fifth-generation F-35 fighters, sitting on refills from strategic tanker aircraft that would make them more than capable of staying with their bombers for the entirety of a massive bombing run. Now, we could go on, of course, or talk about the additional firepower that Japan and South Korea could bring to bear, but we trust that by now you're beginning to get the idea. If Taiwan and the US were, hypothetically speaking, unopposed, they could bomb the living out of the Three Gorges Dam with enough conventional ordnance to turn the world's biggest cities into wastelands. But it should be equally obvious that in an actual armed conflict, it won't be that simple. So how could China hope to prevent the dam's destruction and stop the floods that would follow? Even before we consider any active defense measures China might have in place, there are things about the Three Gorges Dam that help make it impervious to attack. In particular, it's what's known as a gravity dam. That is to say, a dam that resists the outward pressure of water simply with its own weight. We'll go back to the Hoover Dam for a contrast. If that dam were, say, taken out with an explosion at the base, all the concrete above the base would fall downward, way below the water level of Lake Mead, and the collapsed structure wouldn't be able to hold back hardly anything. The Three Gorges Dam, though, is a much larger monolith, made of reinforced concrete that's just sitting in a big man-made mountain. It's also 30 meters taller than the typical water level in its reservoir, meaning that even if some of the top parts of the dam were to be blasted away, there would still be plenty of structure left over above the surface of the water. Obviously, flood conditions on the Yangtze would change this balance significantly, but that's almost certainly something that Chinese military planners would be aware of, making it highly unlikely that China would choose to begin a war if the reservoir levels were so high that a few well-placed bombs could bring the whole dam down. What this means is that any missile or air attack on the dam would have to use specific types of ordnance that don't just damage its outer face, but cause blasts that would rupture the wall of the dam itself, either by using a really huge explosive or by using ones that can burrow into the ground, or in this case, into reinforced concrete before exploding. That's ordnance that the United States has, but Taiwan doesn't. People both in and out of Taiwan, with an incentive to make China nervous about the Three Gorges Dam, will dispute that claim, but there's little indicator that anything in Taiwan's arsenal would be able to create a catastrophic rupture. And then there's the question of China's active defences, which, considering that we're talking about an attack deep within China's own heartland, would certainly be tough to overcome. Not only is the Three Gorges Dam insulated by a range of military bases on China's own territory, but any manned air attack, for example, the strategic bombing runs we mentioned before, would have to deal with the People's Liberation Army Air Force. At its disposal, the PLAAF has over 1,000 fourth-generation fighters, including the Su-27, the Su-30, the J-10 and J-11, the Su-35 and the J-16, as well as a couple of hundred fifth-generation Chengdu J-20 fighters. We've also got well over 600 long-range surface-to-air missile systems and hundreds more at medium and short-range, including dozens of the vaunted Russian-made S-400 system. All of these defences and more will also apply to missile defense, making the sky over China one of the most utterly impenetrable no-fly zones in the entire world. The balance of power over China's skies could, as we've explained, be disrupted during a major war. A massive flyover of the Chinese mainland by American air power and its global partners would at the very least cause major problems for China around the Three Gorges Dam, and the right ordnance, launched at the right targets in the right way and at the right frequency, could conceivably bring it down. That's a difficult needle to thread, and even more difficult if such a strike had to be carried out by Taiwan alone, with its missiles fall by surprise in a submarine conflict. Now, it has to be guessed that some of our more sceptical viewers are thinking something along the lines of, what about all the fancy weapons that the world doesn't know about? Well, that's a valid question, and this is the point of an attack on the Three Gorges Dam. And moreover, the point of Taiwan's entire defensive strategy. Specifically, China cannot get scared off from attacking Taiwan if China doesn't know about the secret weapons that would be used in retaliation. What we're talking about here is strategic deterrence, the practice of dissuading a potentially hostile nation from launching an attack because of the potential costs to themselves. But strategic deterrence just doesn't work unless a nation that wants to defend itself makes sure that its potential enemy has zero illusions about what they could do to them. That's why most nuclear-armed nations have no issue disclosing the world-ending numbers of nuclear weapons that they have in their arsenal, and it's why major strategic military advancements like next-generation fighter jets or naval ships get announced to the world instead of being kept secret until they're deployed into battle. So the risk of a destroyed Three Gorges Dam is certainly a deterrent to China, but a brief look at Taiwan's known arsenal will quickly establish that Taiwan is not the nation to pose that specific deterrent threat. Instead, the deterrent value is to prevent China from willfully entering into a global conflict, probably involving the US, in which nations that consider Taiwan an ally would be willing to use their own deadlier weapons against the Three Gorges Dam. Of course, it's tough to imagine a world in which China takes over Taiwan and the US doesn't have anything to say about it, but the distinction does matter. Taiwan's own porcupine doctrine would suggest that if they did have anything in their arsenal that could bring down the dam, they'd be tripping over themselves to tell the world, and thus tell China. But that hasn't happened. The Three Gorges Dam may be the world's biggest strategic target, but it's not a target Taiwan is likely to bring down. And we will be remiss to conclude this video without at least some discussion of how, for a highly globalized economy, the destruction of the Three Gorges Dam would be a double-edged sword. Not only that, but it's a decision that could come back to bite Taiwan, the US, and the rest of the world in a pretty major way. On the one hand, there's the argument of human cost. The dam's destruction would immediately make the nation that destroyed it culpable for human devastation on the scale of the Black Plague or the entirety of the Second World War. That's the biggest single intentional act of human destruction ever, by an order of magnitude. But if that's not enough, we've also got to emphasise the degree to which a flood of that size will cripple global trade, straight up erase a large portion of the world's food supply, and destroy a part of the world that is vital for global finance, manufacturing and scientific innovation. All that gone in the span of a few hours, thus creating global catastrophes that will take years, if not decades, to solve. Extending that logic outward for just a moment, it's not inconceivable to make the argument that the destruction of the Three Gorges Dam is a hypothetical deterrent in two directions at once. If China fears that Taiwan or the United States could destroy the dam as retaliation if a war breaks out, then China is incentivized to do what it can to prevent that war from breaking out in the first place, or otherwise drawing down hostilities if war does start instead of escalating upwards. But if Taiwan, the US, and other potential participants understand that war would likely mean the dam's destruction, then they too are disincentivized from starting that war in the first place because of the havoc that the dam's destruction would wreak across the world. Finally, we've got to extend our conjecture to the idea that if the dam really was destroyed, this would likely be taken by China as an act equal to, if not greater than, the use of a nuclear weapon. Meaning that, from China's perspective, the use of nuclear weapons might be seen as an appropriate retaliatory measure. That means we've gotten to the nuclear apocalypse part of this escalation anyway, meaning that the US and China might as well have skipped the whole dam issue and gone right to the conclusion. So that's the note of hope, if you can call it hope, that we'll conclude on today. The Three Gorges Dam is, without a doubt, the biggest strategic target in the world.
Father, thank you for today. Thank you for my friends. Thank you for my family. Thank you for our families. Bless our families, Lord. Continue to remind us of your goodness in this world full of badness. Continue to remind us of your light in this darkness. Thank you, O Lord Jesus, because the light shines ever brighter because of all that you've done for us, Jesus. Thank you for everything. Continue to be with us, Lord. In Jesus' name.